Hello and welcome. My name's Heather. I'm a registered professional counselor, and today I'm finally going to be watching Love is Blind Season 2, the reunion episode. I feel like I've been waiting forever to watch this episode, so thank you so much for being patient. I know that this is a highly anticipated video. Let's dive right in.
Big moment for the viewers, I think, was when mistakenly thought Natalie was Shayna. But as opposed to apologizing for that mistake, your response was kind of turn around and just gaslight her.
Yeah.
Oh,
I played victim
no.
card right away.
Oh, Nick Lachey. I know a lot of people have been using the term gaslighting recently. It is not a new term. I think that it's new for public consumption, but it's definitely been in the clinical literature for years. So historically, the term gaslighting came from a play, which was then turned into a few movies. But basically, the premise of those stories or those movies is that there is a man who is intentionally trying to manipulate his wife, I believe. I haven't seen the movie, but I've read about it, and it's hard to be able to watch the movie. But if you want to know exactly what gaslighting is, the movies portray it extremely well, and that's also how it would be used in a clinical literature sense. So over a long period of time, he would use gaslighting as a manipulation tool to gain control over her, and he would do things such as like move the couch over 4 inches or change the furniture around the house, and when she notices it, he'll say, oh no, that it's always been like that. So he's making her question her reality, and it is a slow, long-term process in terms of a manipulation tactic. So when people use the term gaslighting nowadays, it's very removed. It's very different from the clinical literature sense. There's a lot of confusions around what gaslighting actually means, and a lot of therapists and clinicians who aren't quite familiar with this literature also use it in a way that's not entirely accurate. So the way I think of the term gaslighting and how it's being used is sort of like the telephone game. So we have the actual clinical literature, which is the correct definition of what gaslighting is, and what happens is people tend to misinterpret it, or they put their own spin on it, and then they'll make a social media post on TikTok or Instagram, and then other people will see it and they'll be like, oh, this sounds really cool, and then they'll kind of put their own spin on it. So it slowly gets distorted and misused over time, and it's taken out of context from what the actual clinical definition really is. Gaslighting is to purposely manipulate someone by psychological means to make them question their own memory, perception, judgment, or sanity, often with the purpose to control the other person over a long duration of time. In other words, gaslighting is often used over a period of years in order to make someone believe that they can't judge their own reality and they can't judge what fact is over from fiction. So according to the clinical literature of what gaslighting is, here are some signs to look for. If the gaslighter is trying to make someone question their judgment on a particular event, if the gaslighter is trying to make someone question their judgment in general, if the gaslighter is being manipulative in a premeditative stance, meaning that they've been planning to manipulate the other person or planning their ways of how to gaslight the other person. If the gaslighter's actions are purposeful, meaning that it's not by accident and it's not by impulse. If the gaslighter is using this tactic as a way for personal gain. Gaslighting is often a common method used with other abusive methods, such as isolating the victim. So now that we have some signs of what gaslighting is, let's talk about what gaslighting is not. Gaslighting is not when someone disagrees with you. Gaslighting is also not when someone is trying to convince you of something. It is not when someone is trying to put the blame on you or avoid taking the blame. It is not when someone forgets or misremembers an event. It is not when someone denies something or when they make assumptions for how you're feeling. So oftentimes these happen in everyday conflicts all the time in our relationships, and they are not considered gaslighting. Remember, gaslighting happens over years, over a period of time in order to gain control over the other person and to manipulate the situation. So I'm guessing most of the time when we are in an argument with our partners, they are not gaslighting us. There are usually other things going on that may make them react in the these certain ways, such as not taking blame or misremembering an event, right? There are absolutely logical explanations as to why they may be behaving that way. I feel like we just need a different word or term for how it's being used in the general public now. Maybe we could call it flashlighting or something, but that doesn't really sound as cool as gaslighting. Similar to how the public would use it, they would use it similar to what Nicholas Shay just said, which is that Shayne gaslit Natalie, which if you actually go back and look at the definition of what gaslighting is and the 6 signs of what gaslighting is, Shayne did not gaslight Natalie. It was a 5-minute interaction that he had with Natalie. He's not trying to gain control over Natalie, and he's not trying to manipulate her. If anything, he's just trying to lie and deny because he doesn't want to deal with the repercussions of the hurt that Natalie is feeling. And so he reacted in a very impulsive manner, which is honestly what a lot of people tend to do in relationships if they know they did something wrong. They try to shift blame, or they try to ignore the fact that they did anything wrong, or they try to say that the other person is overreacting. This is not gaslighting. This is a very common human reaction. Now, it's not to say that it's okay or it justifies when someone doesn't take responsibility for themselves or when they start blaming the other person, but it's to help us get a better understanding of these different terms and what is appropriate and what might not be a really good fit.
I definitely 100% regret, and I'm honestly ashamed the fact that I just went into straight attack mode. I really wish I would have just let her speak.
The other thing about real gaslighters as well is that they would never admit they were wrong, and they would never apologize, because then that prevents them from being able to reach their goal, which is to gain control over the other person by having them question their reality. So another sign that Shayne wasn't gaslighting Natalie. What might be more of an accurate description of what was going on for Shayne is that he panicked and he reacted in a way that he didn't want to take responsibility for being in the wrong. And again, we see this a lot of times in our relationships when we're in conflict. Another explanation could be the way that they were treated or the way they were reprimanded when they were younger growing up, and if they did something wrong or if they got in trouble. So their knee-jerk reaction is to lie and to avoid. And they take this into their adulthood and in their relationship. So whenever something happens, they just automatically react because they don't want to get in trouble. So that's what I see from Shayne, and again, a very common reaction from a lot of people. The purpose of these videos is to use certain clips from the show to talk about relationship concepts, psychology theories, and also how we can improve our communication skills.
Of asking Natalie to be your girlfriend. Yeah. If you were still interested in exploring some other connections. I got caught in the moment of the situation. I should not have said that either.
So it seems that Shayne has a lot of time to reflect on his behaviors in the pods and how he chose to handle the situation, and he's able to admit that he shouldn't have handled it that way and what he did was wrong, and he's able to see that now. And it can also be really difficult at the time because there's probably a sense of fear of not wanting to lose Natalie, so he wanted to commit to her right away, but he wasn't being transparent or honest about his feelings with Shayna as well. And so he decided to go this route, and he's able to admit that it wasn't the best way of reacting. Again, I'm guessing it's coming from a place of fear or him just being very impulsive, which again, he's admitted. And that's the great thing about these reality shows is that the cast members can actually go back and watch how they react, and we don't really have this opportunity in our everyday lives, is to go back and watch our behaviors and be like, oh wow, like I didn't realize I was doing that, why did I react this way? And then they can start changing that behavior, because you can't change what you don't know or what you can't see. It sounds like on Shayne's end, he's able to really see his patterns of behaviors in the past and realize that, oh, this is not the best way of handling things. And again, it might take some awareness, and on top of that, it might take some work, and it might take some therapy to really get a new handle on different ways of responding or behaving instead of just going right into reaction mode.
Sorry to interrupt you. This show, I didn't want to lose the thought. I'm sorry, but the show is about finding a wife.
What?
I don't think that's true. This show is about finding love, okay? And the way I see it...
As long as she can get on your shoulder.
Oh my god, look at Shayne's face!
That's the point of the show.
Cool. Yeah,
I
that's
know.
actually not what the show's
okay, maybe that was the point of the show, but that's not the takeaway I had.
I guess I can understand where Shake is coming from or what he's trying to say. I guess the show is called Love is Blind and not Marriage is Blind, so maybe he's got a point there. And it's fine if that wasn't Shake's takeaway from his experience. I mean, he's entitled to his own thoughts and own opinions, but I don't think he realizes that the whole point of the show is to marry someone that you have a strong connection with, and that's what everyone has been doing. Why does he have to make it very clear right now is what's interesting. Like, why does he feel the need to have to speak over people? Why does he feel the need to have to feel heard? Like, I feel like he's trying to defend himself.
And thankful for it. Didn't end in marriage.
Of the show is if the connection is strong enough to marry the person
You don't have to.
that connection
Hey,
with.
I'm not going to be put in a box where I have to do that.
He has seen season 1, right? The goal is to get married to the person that you fall in love with in the pods without seeing them. And we have seen in the past season that some people do get married and that this experiment works, and sometimes it doesn't. But it can also mean that, yeah, you found someone, you fell in love, and the relationship didn't work out. And sometimes in life, not all relationships do work out. Not everyone falls in love with their high school sweethearts and ends up marrying them and they live happily ever after. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So is that what he's trying to say? Is he trying to normalize that? So I get where he's coming from, and he's not entirely wrong, but I mean, is this really the time and place to be saying that? The other thing as well is this particular show is about finding love and skipping those steps and getting married right away. It's not the most common way of getting married or to date, but the point of the show is to see if it does work, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And I guess for him, he's just trying to generalize maybe that it's about finding love and falling in love with someone, and maybe you just fall in love for the duration of the show, or you continue dating afterwards and see where that takes you. So maybe that's what he's trying to say. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth like he's trying to put words in everyone else's mouth. Everyone just looks like they're getting really annoyed, and again, it's not really his time to speak. So I'm wondering why he feels the need to insert himself into other people's time to talk or other people's conversations or their own thought process. And we just see Shayne, he's just getting super annoyed, and he's just sitting right beside him too. Oh my goodness.
Trust me, it's not I don't think about that fucking night and go over it in my head differently. 100%, yeah.
Did you say things you didn't want to say?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it sucks because I feel like that night changed everything. I truly believe that he is remorseful of it. He has apologized a million times.
We do see a level of understanding from Shayne. He understands that he needs to respond in a different way rather than reacting. And he's mentioned that before as well. Again, therapy can definitely help with that, and just learning different coping skills. It will take some time, especially because if we're used to reacting, and if that's our knee-jerk reaction in certain times when we're triggered, it takes time to establish and build onto a new habit or new way of coping. He's apologizing and he takes ownership. Same with Natalie, and unfortunately, it's just one of those things where fights can have a lasting impact on relationship.
For us, it was kind of a wake-up call that wow, we have big issues to work through, and maybe we're not ready for marriage.
This is probably a good example of why it might be better to go to bed angry as opposed to try to stay up and try to fix the conflict or fix the problem, because you might say something you're going to regret. Our words matter, and once things are said, things are out there, you can't take them back. And I know some people might disagree with this suggestion and they think that you need to work things out before going to bed, and that's totally fine if you disagree. Totally up to you as to what you and your partner want to do. I personally would recommend couples to take more time and space before revisiting the conflict. Maybe going for a walk or taking half an hour to go do something else and to calm down, and then revisit it if you want to try to solve that before going to bed. That could be a solution too.
The words that I use, they just didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, you're still not, you haven't apologized, your side of the story.
I know that it came from a place of you being frustrated with me, or me making you feel like you weren't enough.
It seems like Natalie is able to understand her part and her role, which is that she made him feel frustrated or she made him feel like he wasn't enough. And I think she does have that level of understanding because they've obviously talked about it before, and maybe we just didn't see to the extent or the depth of how they've talked about it.
So the way when we said it earlier was like just saying those words, I know you didn't mean it, you were angry, this and that. It's like, yes, but like you didn't say like I was a good guy there. Like I just want you to say those kind of things.
So it seems like they still have that miscommunication even now. I guess she could have also apologized, but she said that she's already apologized to him before, and he's saying that she needs to tell him that he's a good guy. It seems like he has a very particular way of what should be said in the conversations. And again, maybe it's just because of his past experiences or traumas or attachment injuries that he needs more reassurance. And when he doesn't get that reassurance, then he gets upset. This has been a constant conflict or theme in their communication styles where it doesn't really match, because we see Natalie, she's obviously still very upset by the situation. Maybe it's still very raw and she hasn't fully processed it or healed from it. But it sounds like it's just his expectations of what needs to be said is just quite rigid, and when it doesn't get that way, then he starts getting triggered or he starts reacting. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more analysis videos. In the meantime, feel free to check out my other therapist reviews videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, be kind and love yourself.